Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I recently visited Vietnam thinking I knew exactly what I would find. The chaos, the food, the landscapes. What I didn't expect was how much this place would slow me down. It's loud, it's busy, and it's beautiful. But its people also have an important part to play. Early mornings were sipping coffee with the locals, night times were watching the traffic go past, and there were quiet moments where you just stop and watch life happen. I brought my camera to photograph the place, but I ended up photographing the feelings of just being there. This isn't a guide or a checklist. This is Vietnam as I saw it through my lens.
So we just jumped onto a boat at Ho Long Bay. I think we're just heading off. Also about to grab a bite of eat, but the plan is to head out into the bay so we can actually sleep on the boat in the bay. So I'm kind of hoping that I'll get a chance to do a nice sunset and maybe even a sunrise too. So who knows? See what happens. We've been on the cruise now for about an hour and we're well and truly in the middle of all the islands. There's about 2,000 islands here and the whole area is heritage listed with UNESCO, and you can see why. Absolutely stunning. You wouldn't want to do anything that's going to upset or destroy any of this area. Absolutely beautiful. There is some bad weather coming through. I was hoping to do maybe a sunrise shot of the islands, but there is some bad weather. There is talk of maybe even a thunderstorm, so that could actually make things quite interesting. So either way, hopefully I'll be able to get a bit of a shot later on. But for now, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the scenery. Okay, so I stuffed up, decided to do a tour. Didn't think about what time the tour would finish, didn't take my main camera with me, and it is now just past sunset. So no sunset for me today. I did manage to use the camera phone to take a shot, so use the camera that you have So the camera that you have with you is always the best one to use. I did take some shots, not great, but here they are anyway. And the plan is to get up for sunset instead now. All right, here's the shot.
I have made it up for sunrise. It was a little bit of a struggle this morning. The weather here is really quite warm and humid, so didn't get a lot of sleep last night, although we did have the aircon on, so it was a bit of a battle between too warm and too cold. But I'm up. It's so peaceful. It really is. There's a super typhoon due here in a couple of days. We are planning to make it out of here before then. And when I went to sleep last night, the water was still quite smooth and there wasn't a lot of movement in the boat. But I've woken up this morning and there's a bit of waves happening. It's not huge, but it's definitely a lot more noticeable than it was last night. So there's a fair bit more movement in the boat, which means that if I'm going to do some long exposure photography, I'm only going to be able to do maybe a second, I think. So I'm going to set up the camera, take a couple of test shots, and see what I can get. So I have had a bit of a play with the camera, given that there's a fair bit of waves happening, and also that the boat is moving a fair bit. So we are anchored here, and I can see just by looking at some of the other islands and other boats that we are moving not a lot, but enough. I've had a look at the camera and done a couple of test shots, and I'm getting about, I think it's about 0.3 of a second at the moment. So not a great log exposure, but I am going to give it a try. The other thing is that there is very little clouds in the sky at the moment. When I went to sleep, there was plenty of clouds around. I did contemplate getting up to try some astrophotography, but looking at the clouds, it wasn't going to happen. But I've woken up this morning and there's no clouds in the sky. So hopefully there'll be a bit of clouds on the horizon that I can't see, and that might light up some of the sky. So I'm still going to give it a try. That's what all this is about. You can't really predict the conditions. There's always going to be something. So it's just a matter of getting out here and giving it a try. This is a image that I was thinking about taking a shot of. As you can see, no clouds, well, not very many clouds. There's a little bit of clouds in the horizon. But the reason I like this composition is that you've still got some of the boats, but you've also got the islands pointing away. So it's kind of like a bit of an alcove, and the images, the islands are kind of pointing away into the distance. So to me, that provides a bit of a, not necessarily a leading line, but it just kind of draws the eye in a little bit more. These are the settings that I'm going to be using for this image. I've got 1/4 of a second. That seems to be working at the moment to be able to capture the whole scene without any blurriness. F4 is the lowest this aperture will go, so that's what I've said as well, given that I want to bring in as much light as I can. And I've had to even bump the ISO up to about ISO 200 to get as much light as I can without blowing everything out. Even in the last couple of minutes that I've taken to set this up, I can feel that the boat has moved. So the actual movement is getting quite significant. All right, I'm going to try and take the shot. I have come down to the back of the boat to try and take a different shot. The one up the front facing the sunset really wasn't working. So I'm just exploring around. There's not really a lot of options. Who would have figured that on a boat there wouldn't have been too many options of scenery to take? But there you go. But I am down at the back of the boat at the moment, just seeing what I can find. There is a nice composition that I think I'm going to try and set up. And I'll show you that in a minute. Essentially, he's got one boat in the middle, and again, the islands are kind of leading off into the distance, so it kind of points or leads the eye into a particular direction. So I think that's quite nice. But even down the back of this boat, you can feel the wind a lot more. So hopefully that doesn't come across on the audio too much. I wasn't very prepared this morning. I forgot the mic just to add to all the complexities of everything this morning. But again, you get that. But I'm going to soldier on and see what I can do. The wind had started to pick up, giving a hint of what was to come with the super typhoon coming in from the east. I had framed up the composition, but a few seconds later the boat had moved, so I was having to realign the composition quite often. Given how much the boat was moving, I was able to get away with a quarter of a second for the exposure time. I was also using an aperture of f4, but everything was quite far in the distance, so everything remained in focus. And because the sun was starting to come up, I was able to get away with an ISO of 100. I had also zoomed in to 50mm to give the islands some of the grandeur that they deserved. They are quite amazing, so I was trying to capture some of that. And here is the shot. So this boat has 3 levels, and I've decided just to come up to the top. Well, I resisted coming up to the top because I figured at the top there'd be more of a sensation of movement. But now that I'm up here, it actually doesn't seem too bad, and the wind, for some weird reason, doesn't seem to be as strong up here. But I'm going to try and take the same photo that I took on the lower deck and see if that's going to come out any better. And after that, I think I might just do a time lapse just while the sun's coming up. I have now got the camera doing just a number of exposures. I've got it set up for aperture priority. That was f11, and the thinking is that as the sun rises and everything becomes a little bit brighter, that the aperture priority will actually take care of the exposure for me. So I'm going to let that run for a little while. I've got the images set for every 15 seconds, so I'm going to let that run and see what happens. Okay, so I've got the time lapse going. There's supposed to be a bit of Tai Chi up on the top deck a little bit later on this morning, so I'm going to let that run until people start appearing. And for the moment, I'm just going to sit back, relax, and enjoy the peace and quiet, and the scenery, of course. Okay, so maybe a slight change of plan. I've had the time lapse going for maybe about 15-20 minutes. The sun is starting to come up over the islands, and it is actually shining some nice light onto some of the islands. So I'm going to stop the time lapse. I'm going to start taking a couple of images and hopefully get some nice light across the islands as well.
So I'm currently cruising along.
What am I trying to say?